For vengeance, Apharius was there and tried to throw a rock wrench from the mountain side, but Theseus caught him as he threw and smashed his giant elbow with a club of oak. Enough, no time nor wish to do to death that good for nothing. On Bianor's back he leapt, a back not used to carry a soul except himself, and knees gripping his flanks and left hand holding fast his head of hair, he swung the knotted club and smashed his mouth, screaming out threats, and broke his bony brow. That club then felled Nedymus and Lycopes, famed for his javelin, and Hippasus, whose long beard draped his chest, and Ripheus too, whose stature overtopped the forest trees, and Thereus, who would capture mountain bears of Thessaly and bring them home alive and snarling. Theseus's triumphs in the fight were too much for Demoleon. He tried with a huge heave to uproot an ancient pine, a sturdy trunk, and when his efforts failed, he snapped it off and threw it at his foe. But as the missile came, Theseus drew back beyond its range, on Pallas's advice, or so he'd have us think. But still the trunk did not fall idle. From tall Crantor's neck it severed his left shoulder and his breast. Crantor, Achilles, was your father's squire. Amintor, leader of the Dolopes, worsted in war, had sent him as a gift to be a pledge of peace and loyalty. When Peleus at a distance saw the lad cleft by that hideous wound, "Crantor," he cried, "my favorite, at least receive from me your death-right gift." And with his powerful arm and all his passion's strength, he hurled his spear full at Demoleon. It broke his ribs and hung there quivering in the box of bones. The Centaur wrenched the shaft away without the point. The shaft would hardly come. The point stuck in his lung. His very agony gave him wild strength. Despite his wound, he reared and pounded Peleus with his horse's hooves. On helm and ringing shield, Peleus received the lashing hooves, and so defended, held his lance point leveled, and with one thrust pierced the Centaur's shoulder and his two-formed chest. Already at a longer range he'd slain Phlegreus and Hyles, and hand to hand Aphinois and Clonus. Now to them he added Dorylas, who wore a cap of wolfskin on his head, with for a lance a splendid pair of bull's horns red with blood. I shouted to him, anger gave me strength. "See how your horns yield to my steel," and threw my spear. Unable to escape, he raised his hand to shield his threatened brow, and hand was nailed to brow. A shout went up. He stood there stuck and beaten by the bitter wound, and Peleus, for he stood nearer, struck him with his sword full in his belly. Leaping fiercely forward, he trailed his guts, trampled them as they trailed, and trampling burst them, and the tangle tripped his legs, and belly empty, he collapsed. Nor did his beauty ransom Silaris, fighting that day. It hybrid such as he be granted beauty. His beard was just beginning, a golden beard, and golden tresses fell down on his shoulders, reaching to his flanks. High metalled grace shone in his face. His neck, chest, shoulders, hands, and every manly part seemed like a sculptor's much praised masterpiece. Unblemished too his equine shape, nor less fine than his man's. With horse's head and neck he'd make fit mount for Castor, so high stood his chest muscles, so rideable his back. Jet black he was, the whole of him, save that his tail was white and legs were milk white too. Many a Centaurus would be his mate, but one had gained his heart, Hylonomy. In the high woods there was none comelier of all the Centaur girls, and she alone by love and love-sweet words and winning ways held Cylaris, yes, and the care she took to look her best, so far as that may be with limbs like that. She combed her glossy hair, and twined her curls in turn with rosemary or violets or roses, and sometimes she wore a pure white lily. Twice a day she bathed her face in the clear brook that fell from Pegase's high forest. Twice she plunged her body in its flow, nor would she wear on her left side and shoulder any skin but what became her from her best chosen beasts. Their love was equal. On the hills they roamed together, and together they would go back to their cave. And this time too they went into the Lapiths' palace side by side, and side by side were fighting in the fray. A javelin, no knowing from whose hand, came from the left and wounded Cylaris, landing below the place where chest joins neck. Slight wound, but when the point was pulled away, cold grew his damaged heart, and cold his limbs. Hylonomy embraced him as he died, caressed the wound, and putting lips to lips, she tried to stay his spirit as it fled. And when she saw him lifeless, she moaned words that in that uproar failed to reach my ears, and fell upon the spear that pierced her love, and dying held her husband in her arms.